We already talked about some unusual tactical shots in the opening. Sometimes they come as a punishment for your opponent's mistakes, some violations of basic principles. Sometimes they come without any pattern and without reason, just unexpected shots. But most of the time, crisis in the opening is a result of extensive and deep opening preparation. On any level in the game of chess, there is big part plays opening preparation. People, even grandmasters and weaker players like 1800 players and 1500 players, they prepare some traps or some openings deeper to get comfortable position or get winning position, get very position with a lot of tactical shots, a position with good strategical play. And as a result, a lot of games being decided in the opening in one way or the other. Either it's a crushing attack or winning position strategically. So what I want to do now is just to look at some tactical shots as a result of very careful opening preparation. Even on the highest level, this happens, even today. Theory changes every day. It's very important to follow carefully whatever opening changes been happening and opening development in the latest games. So let's look at some of them. Let me give you one example that I already covered on one of my tapes. If you followed in the Roman Forum, it was several years ago. One of the examples of a Caro-Kann defense, the Panov attack. I'm going to show you the variation that was known as good for black. C takes D, knight takes D5, bishop D3, castle, knight C6, rook E1, knight F6, A3. This is all very well known in theory. Now, after last move A3, black plays B6, and white goes bishop C2. And after bishop B7, queen to D3. As I said, I already mentioned it in one of my previous tapes. So here, black must play G6. And this comes as a preparation, as opening preparation. Originally, in one of the games, one of the grandmasters played most obvious and natural move, rook C8, and he got crushed immediately. I think one of the grandmasters I'm referring to was Petrosian, and he was crushed after rook C8. This is a losing move, rook C8, and it does not seem like black is in any kind of danger. You see that queen and the bishop lined up to H7 square, but there is knight on F6 protecting. But here white has nearly forced win. That starts with move D5, E takes D, bishop G5, threatening bishop takes F6, and queen takes H7 mate. So G6 is losing. G6 moved because white plays rook takes E7, and you see that white wins quickly. If knight takes E7, bishop takes F6, and if queen takes E7, then knight takes D5, and black is busted. So black's move, knight e4, is practically forced. Knight takes e4, d takes e4, and this leads to easily won endgame for white. You see, queen takes e4, we're going to get endgame right from the opening. Well, where was the middle game? We're going to look at it. After queen takes e4, threatening mate on h7, g6 is forced, bishop takes e7. Now queen takes e7, queen takes e7, knight takes e7, rook takes e7. Every move is forced. And now black must play bishop takes f3 to keep, to stay away from losing piece. And after bishop takes f3, bishop b3. Now black's bishop is hanging. Bishop has to go to a8. And rook takes a7, which gives white extra pawn and winning position. Now, we got to the end game right from the opening. Where is the middle game? There was no middle game. Middle game was the part of the opening. Opening was analyzed all the way to the end game. And end game is totally lost. So what did black do wrong? Did black violate any principles? No. That's what opening preparation is. Powerful tactics being used for breaking through black's position. So rook c8 is one of the so-called invisible mistakes. The correct move is g6, which is known in theory. So let me tell you, the preparation number one for white was against rook c8 move. So this has been done. So black plays g6. Now bishop h6, rook e8, and rook a to d1. Now black plays rook c8. And this is known position. Years ago, it was known that knight g5 is not a good move because black plays knight to g4 and bishop on h6 kind of trapped. This is also very, very bad for black, but was known as good for black. So why is it bad? Knight takes f7. This is a forced win for white. King takes f7 is forced. Queen f3 check, and knight to f6 is forced. And now we get to very interesting stage of tactical battle. And this is very, very difficult to find on board unless you prepared it at home. Now d5 move, which forces black to recapture. And here we get to very interesting tactics for white. It looks like rook takes d5 may be winning. It looks like white has very beautiful win. Let me show you what I mean. Rook takes d5, attacking the queen, and if queen goes to c7, it's a very unusual move. Rook d7, attacking the queen, and if queen takes the rook, then bishop to b3, believe it or not, it's a checkmate. Because queen has to interpose, queen d5 or queen e6, and bishop is going to take the queen. That's a checkmate. That's not the checkmate you can see every day, or every month, or every year. So, However, in this position that we just had, after e takes d, rook takes d5 is a losing move for white. Because a lot of times when you prepare and you have tactical shots, you do not forget about counter tactics. Now, after knight d4, we see that game is ending with a wrong winner. Black wins after knight d4. You see the queen is hanging, white queen is hanging, and white rook is hanging. This is not good for black. So what black has to do, white has to do, is just to play bishop to b3. And now you see the standing of bishop b3 and king on f7. Black's position is not very pleasant. Black plays knight a5, bishop takes at d5, every move is forced. Bishop takes d5, rook takes d5 is not good here because queen simply goes to c7. So knight has to take on d5, and black's king is in trouble. Now if king goes to g8, then after knight takes f6 and bishop takes f6, white simply plays rook takes d8, and black rook on e8 is pinned, and black cannot take on e1. However, black has queen d6 move in this position. Queen d6 move. And now it's interesting. We can take knight takes e7 attacking queen, or we can take knight takes f6 attacking queen. They are both bad. A knight takes f6, black simply plays bishop takes f6, and because of the back rank weakness, white loses since they are pieced down. The correct move, and a knight takes e7, by the way, is the same, rook takes e7, and a back rank problem. The correct move in this position is g4, and now white has knight takes f6 threat. Now white has knight takes e7 threat, since there is no back rank mate, and white has g5 threat, pinning the knight. Black is totally lost here. Now this position is a result of opening home preparation. I developed this variation, it was years ago, and I used once and it did work. So this is like, it's not like black violated some principles of the opening. No, they got punished because they blindly just followed theoretical advice, and they lost. And those things happen. Nobody is saved against unexpected preparation and unexpected tactics and prepared some novelties. So this, what we saw, was in Caro-Kann. I wanna show you a couple of interesting examples that also result of the opening preparation. One of them was used against me, and it was a very memorable game that I lost. It was many years ago. I lost to a very famous grandmaster who is now passed away, Boleslavsky, and it was played in Belarusia years ago. It was Queen's Gambit accepted. I was playing white. I was playing black, I'm sorry. The d4, d5, c4, dc, knight f3, knight f6. Now, I played every move according to the latest theory development, and e3 e6, bishop takes c4, c5, castle, a6, knight c3, b5, bishop b3, bishop b7, queen e2. This is all theory. Bishop, now, after queen e2, black plays knight d7, rook d1, queen to b8. This is also a theoretical move, the best move known in theory. d5, e takes d, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, bishop takes d5, rook takes d5. This is one of those variations that was carefully analyzed, and it's a long variation. It's already almost a middle game, but it's still considered as a theory because this all was played dozens or maybe hundreds of times on a reasonable level. So rook takes d5, queen to b7, e4, bishop to e7, and bishop to g5. Now, this position is known, and theory recommends as a best move is knight b6, and that's exactly what I played. Now, this is deep middle game. At the same time, this is an opening because this is all been developed. We saw in a previous example, we got endgame position with two rooks and a bishop versus two rooks and a bishop. But it was endgame, but it was opening position. It comes right from the opening. This endgame position is part of the opening. So after knight b6, what was played before, white was retreating the rook, black was castling, and it was considered as okay variation for black. And that's exactly what I did, knight b6. But I was shocked when my opponent played rook a1 to d1. And here I started thinking. Before I'll show you how game developed, I have to explain that at that time, Boleslavsky was a world champion Petrosian's coach, and he prepared him for world championship match against Boris Spassky, and this was part of the preparation. This powerful variation they both prepared, Boleslavsky and Petrosian, against Spassky. However, Spassky avoided playing Queen's Gambit accepted, and I turned out to be an innocent victim here. So after knight b6, rook a to d1, I did not take white rook because I did not like my position after pawn takes d5, and then threat is rook e1 or pawn d6. I really hated my position. So I decided not to do that. And I thought I found a very clever idea for black. I didn't even suspect that that's exactly what they were aiming for. So what was I guilty of? I was guilty of not suspecting that there is some opening preparation. I played h6. That's the clever move. And when my opponent took on e7, my bishop, now I took the rook. And now here is my thought. If pawn takes my knight, then I play queen takes bishop, and I have an exchange, rook for a knight, and either I exchange queens or I castle. And I have winning position, and I would have been happy. Well, however, I didn't think my opponent would take. I knew he would take on c5. That's exactly what happened, and I was prepared for it, and I played knight e7. And now I realize that all I have to do is to castle, and I'm in a very good shape. But this castle, all I had to do castle, but that was not possible for me to do. My opponent played knight e5, and now I'm a dead duck. So after knight e5, the threat is rook d7. And it's interesting that my opponent spent a whole game, and this we are talking about grandmaster who liked to, normally he was using all his time, all 2.5 hours. And here he spent 10 minutes for the whole game, because none of it was played on the board. It was all part of the preparation. I cannot castle, obviously, because he plays rook d7 and then takes on e7, the knight. So I played rook c8. I'm still not suspecting of any danger. I'm not seeing any danger. My opponent plays rook d7, and I play rook c7. And here, my opponent played something. I almost fell off my chair. He played rook d8 check. Well, fortunately for me, I have only one move. I cannot go wrong, so I took the rook. And now knight takes to f7. And I have a very pleasant choice to get mated or to lose my queen. That's not the choice I expected to have when I played rook c8. Now, if I go king e8, knight d6 fork gives white winning position. If I go to king c8, knight d6 fork with the same result. So I came up to king d7, and after that queen g4 check. Again, I have a choice to go to e8 and get the same fork on d6, or go to c6. I went to c6, and after queen e6 check, I resigned, because queen takes c5, then king takes c5, then queen d6 check, king c4, and knight e5 checkmate. Now, this position, as Boleslavsky told me right after the game, it was on their analysis preparation board for that World Championship match. It's very unfortunate. This is one of the games I lost. Very unfortunate that I was the victim, but this is the one of not too many games in my chess career I didn't mind losing. And I get great pleasure out of it, to see such a deep and powerful preparation. And of course, this game quickly was publicized in chess world, and everybody after that stayed away from this variation for black. So that's how I became famous by playing this game. This was one of the most powerful opening preparation I have seen in my life. Now, there is one interesting opening, as you know, if you have my previous tapes, I developed is a Scotch Gambit in a Gioco Piano. There were tapes on that. I just don't want to go through the opening because that may take a couple of hours, but I want to show you one trap, very well hidden trap, that as a result of white's good positional strategy. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, e takes d, bishop c4, knight f6, e5, d5, bishop b5, knight e4. And I don't want to stop on and explain move by move why this move was played, why this not, because if you want to know all details of this opening, you can get the tape that called Scotch Gambit that I produced, and all details are there. I just want to show you a little part of it. Bishop d7, bishop takes c6, pawn takes c6, castle, bishop c5, f3, knight g5, f4, knight e4, bishop e3, castle, knight d2, knight takes d2, queen takes d2, queen e7, knight b3, bishop b6, queen c3, f6. Now, in this position, what black tries to put pressure on e5 pawn. White plays knight c5, f takes e, f takes e, and black can play rook f to e8. The idea is to put pressure on e5 pawn, as I said, threatening maybe queen takes e5. And here, in this position, white can make simple move to knight on c5 is very strong, and to support this knight by playing b4. Now, question is, this is trap. Now, the idea of what white wants to do, to play b4, support the knight, and put the bishop on d4, and they have very good blockading position in the center, and they have positional advantage. And if black tries to do something like queen takes e5, this is a booby trap. E5 pawn is untouchable, and if queen takes e5, then is a shocking rook f8 check, and black can resign on the spot. What happens here? Rook has to be taken with a queen, with a king, or with a rook. If rook takes rook, simply queen takes e5, and if king takes rook, then knight takes to d7, check, and next move, knight is gonna take black queen, and the game is over. Either way, black, after rook f8, loses a queen, and the game is over. So this is tactical shot, and it's not like a trap that white played all game for. White played this position for a blockade in the center and had some positional values they had. So, and if black tries to do something to disrupt and to interfere with this plan, that's what my rook f8 was a result of it. So this is, and this was also prepared at home and was played by me once, but then it's on my tape, and I've heard from many people who bought my tapes, they said they have won games with that more than once, with the same rook f8 shot, and I was quite surprised that so many people got into the same trap, because every move that was played by black was logical, so that's why it's easy to get in this trap. Now, let's look at the game. That's an opening trap. Now it's known like one of the most popular opening traps. As at least that's what it seems to me. So e4, c5. That's the game played between Fischer and Reshevsky. Obviously, it was not a year or two ago. It was more like 30 years ago. Knight c6, maybe even 40 years ago. d4, cd, knight takes d4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, bishop e3, knight f6, and bishop c4. This is very well known position of accelerated dragon. Black castles, that's one of the possible moves. White plays bishop b3, and here unsuspected Reshevsky made a move, knight a5, which he did like, and well, obviously he liked, otherwise he wouldn't have played it, and loses by force. How can move like this, like knight a5, Black's idea to go after strong light square bishop of whites? Fischer played e5. Obviously, Black cannot take the bishop now because pawn takes knight on f6 wins the material for white. So, what Reshevsky played was knight e8. And he was prepared for e5 move, and he thought e5 pawn may be a weakness. And here he got a very unpleasant surprise. Bishop takes f7. Now this was shocking move for Reshevsky, and he has a Black must play king takes f7, because if Black plays rook takes f7, then after knight e6 you can see that Black's queen is trapped. I remember Fischer mentioning that this was prepared by him at home, this variation. Knight e6 traps the queen, so king takes f7 is forced. Unexpectedly, white plays knight e6 anyway. Now traps the queen, unless king takes white's knight. So king takes knight, but then comes more trouble. Queen d5 check, king to f5, and now e6 discovered check, and Black is getting mated in a couple of moves. This is very, very powerful game played by Fischer. On king g4, I believe you can go simply queen g5 mate, and on king f6 bishop g5 mate, and on bishop e5 there are numerous ways to win as well. You can set it up on your any one of your engines and computer programs, and they will show you quick mate. We don't want to go into deep details of it. So that's another thing, another knight a5 variation. Knight a5 move was refuted at home by e5. Now let me go to one very, very unusual type of tactics. Very unusual type of tactics that happened in my early years. I played Black in Ruy Lopez, and I used to play then some very sharp variations, bishop b5, bishop c5, and on c3 I played f5. I did not know much of a theory in this opening, but one thing I liked, that it's very sharp. And when I started going deeper and deeper in this and analyzing, I learned a lot about this opening. And I prepared some very, very powerful tactic that was well hidden, and it doesn't happen too often, but my opponent got right into this net. After f5, d4, I played f takes e, This is all theory. Now, the best move for white, I think, is simply to take bishop, and when black takes on f3, to play queen takes f3. White has better development than two bishops. Black is not in any kind of danger immediately, but white has some advantage. There is this continuation, and there is a lot more ambitious continuation, which my opponent played. Knight g5, bishop b6, and now white played d5. Now, I prepared all this for black, and I was ready for it. Now, knight is hanging on c6. And here are the choices. Can I move the knight? No, I cannot touch this knight. I cannot touch this knight because if I go knight b8, after simple knight takes e4, I have strategically lost position. I have very bad game. If knight goes to e7, I have even worse game because after knight e6, I'm losing my queen. As you see, d7 pawn is pinned. But however, I went for it, and I played e3 move. See, now on my own, I'm attacking knight on g5 because I'm disconnecting c1 knight, c1 bishop, and g5 knight. So my opponent played d takes c. He took the knight, and I cannot take white's knight because pawn takes d7. Check wins the material. Well, I knew that, and I play pawn takes pawn. Now white has two minor pieces hanging, b5 and g5. So white gives one minor piece and wins the rook. White plays h4, protecting the knight, and I took on f2 check, king f1, and now I took the bishop. Now it looks like black is winning. They have three extra pawns. But here comes queen d5, the key move, threatening queen f7 mate, and threatening queen takes rook. So I played knight h6. Of course, I have to protect mate. I knew that mate takes preference over the rook. So white plays queen takes a8. And here I play c6. Now this is the position I went for. I went for position where I have 3 pawns for a rook. I have 3 pawns for a rook, but white has bad queen on a8, trapped queen, which either white is going to lose this queen on a8, or he's going to lose a lot of time getting queen out of there. And also very bad king on f1. So white played knight e4, threatening knight d6 check, or even maybe queen takes c8, followed by knight d6 check. So I castled, and now white played bishop g5, attacking my queen. White never made any more moves. Now black made a move in this position, and white instantly resigned. And that move, I was proud then that that move was prepared at home too. White made a move, black resigned. Move is b4. This move ends the game. Black is threatening bishop to a6 mate, and also threatening bishop a6 with queen takes queen. For example, if white plays c4, then bishop a6, having 2 murderous threats. One is checkmate, bishop takes c4, and the other is queen takes queen. And Black, after b4 move, wins instantly. White resign. The interesting part I have to notice here, I have to tell you that it looked like bishop a6 does the same thing and has the same result. It's not so. Bishop a6 is not, it's also okay, but not nearly as strong, because white can get out of it now by playing unexpected queen b7. That's a one weird move after another. And now if bishop takes b7, bishop takes d8. See, and white is alive anyway. So bishop a6 is not as good. So this was played about 35 years ago, this game. We did not have then chess playing programs. We didn't have computers for chess. We didn't have these engines. And we had to do very, very hard work to prepare some opening variations, some traps, and do some work, do some researches. Today is completely different story. All you have to do, come up with ideas, tactical for powerful tactics, and you don't have to spend hours and hours checking the taxes. How is it? Does it work? It doesn't work. You can feed your program the ideas, and that will check for you about the tactical part of it. We had to do it all by hand. You have a lot of help in technology. So one interesting, now the opening preparation, prepared variations can work both ways. It can backfire. So I played, that was also quite a few years ago, I prepared very, very interesting variation in mix of variety and English opening. For example, c4, c5, knight f3, e6, d4, cd, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6, g3, queen c7. Now this is very well-known position, and there were few different moves being tried here for white. One of them is b3, and black has good game after d5. And there is a queen b3, there is a queen d3. The move I made is a very, very tricky move. But then I was obsessed with this move because of the beauty of the possible variation. And I played bishop d2. It's a weird looking move, and it's not a good move. It's good only if black falls in the trap. Queen takes c4 is a bad, bad idea. So my opponent, who was a very good player, he felt some danger, and he played simply knight c6. And now I see I cannot take knight on c6 because queen takes c6, and I have to make some uncomfortable move with the rook. Or if I move the knight, there is no way I can justify my bishop on d2. And I didn't have a good game. Game ended in a draw, but I was inferior most of the game. Now let's look what would have happened. That was my preparation if my opponent took the pawn on c4. Now, as I said, this did not happen. But if he took the pawn on c4, then he would have been in a lot of trouble. Here is my opening preparation. So I spent so much time on it that I felt that I have to play it. I have to play it, and I did play it. So if my opponent took here, I would have gone rook c1. Now rook and queen on very dangerous file. If queen takes d4, which is normal move, now winning move for white is knight to d5. Threatening knight c7 check and threatening rook takes c8. The best answer is queen takes d5. Now black has two extra pieces and a pawn. Rook takes c8, king to e7. Now black still has extra knight and a pawn. But here comes shocking bishop g2. And you see that black cannot play queen takes g2 because bishop b4 is a checkmate after d6. Queen takes d6, it's a checkmate. So black must play in this position queen d6, and after queen b3 with the idea of bishop b4, white is totally winning. Now, and after a5 to stop that, queen takes b7, and black is totally crushed. This is an example, but again, you should, the reason why I gave you this example is because when you make some opening preparation and powerful tactics, I will not advise you to damage your position playing for traps. I played bishop d2, and it was good only in case my opponent falls in the trap. And he didn't. When he didn't, I was very unhappy with the result of the opening. There is another thing. One example that I want to show you, which is very, very instructive. The Caro-Kann. Caro-Kann defense. e4, c6, d4, d5. It's a different variation of Caro-Kann. Knight c3, d takes e, knight takes e4, knight d7, knight f3, knight f6. Well, this is one way to play for white, and the second way to play for white is bishop c4, on which black plays knight f6 anyway. So variation I want to look at is bishop c4, knight f6. This is very well-known position. Knight g5, pawn to e6, queen to e2. In this position, knight b6, actually knight b6 move, and white plays bishop d3, and it's not good for black to take this d4 pawn, because that loses almost by force. Black get in a lot of trouble by playing knight f3, attacking queen, and when queen goes anywhere, or even check, and pawn c3, next move is knight to e5, and black cannot protect the f7 pawn, and black is lost. So, but this is known in theory. So the correct move is h6, knight to f3, c5, d takes c, and this position was very popular for quite some times. Black was always playing bishop takes c5. But then some players developed different idea for black. They played knight d7. When they played bishop takes c5, knight on b6 was not good. after white played c4 in a later stage of the they had a problem with knight on b6. So what they tried to do, play knight b6 to d7 and try to recapture on c5 with the knight, which is very good position for the knight. Now, let me tell you what happened in one game. White played b4, a5, now white played c3. Now white has an extra pawn, and black tries to get compensation for it. Black has several interesting moves like knight d5, b6, or taking on b4 followed by b6. So what happened in this game is a takes b, c takes b, and now b6 move. And you can, it looks like black's strategy was correct. Now, if white takes on b6, then bishop takes b4 check, followed by queen takes b6 or knight takes b6. Black is doing okay. Black also is doing well after c6, because bishop takes b4 check, followed by knight c5, gives black a good game. But here comes very, very unusual move. Knight takes d4, b takes c, and after knight c6, black can resign. Queen has to move c6, c7, or b6, it doesn't really matter. Queen takes e6 check, pawn takes, and bishop g6 checkmate. So I just gave you number of ideas, material that you can work on. Now, you have to work on this, and you see if you can use these ideas to refill your opening repertoire or make them as part of your repertoire. Now, my job is to give you ideas, and only advice I can give you, you have a much better advisor than me from tactical viewpoint, is your computer program. However, how well justified it is, you have to use your judgment, positional judgment, and that's what makes difference between stronger and weaker player. And when your judgment prevails, when you start making right decisions and right judgments, that means you become a better chess player. Thank you very much.